Hello, everybody. Welcome to Myriacast episode 12. Today, I'm joined with my co-host SPT Spoon. Spoon.
Hey everybody, good to be back after a week off.
Yep. And back with us from our previous KH episode. So this is part 2 of our KH series of episodes. Is Mist. Mist, how are you doing?
I am doing fantastically, and thank you again for letting me back on here.
Of course. So Myriacast episode 12. We were very excited to get this KH part 2. I just feel like we didn't get everything across that we needed to. So very happy that Miss you could take the time to do this, especially on, obviously with everything going on, but this is Memorial Day weekend for those of you who are celebrating this. I hope everybody is, if you're with family, that's great. If you're able to, if not, I hope you're staying safe. We appreciate you coming by to this podcast today. So let's get the intro out of the way. If you have been here before, I think you know the deal. But if you haven't, the Myriacast is a podcast that is a part of the Myriathon, which is a biannual charity gaming marathon. And our next one, actually, is going to be in a couple of weeks. June 8th to 14th will be...
2 weeks.
Yep, 2 weeks from now is the next marathon. And we will be having a Myriacast as well on that first Monday. We're not sure exactly what we're going to be talking about, but if you are interested in supporting us, we'll be supporting Direct Relief for the efforts against COVID-19. So please be sure to stop by during that marathon and support us. You can support my Twitter for Myriacast updates. So that's the name you see on here, Automaton, and then 89 at the end of it. You can also support the Myriathon Twitter, Twitch, and all that. You can see all those socials on our overlay. If you can't, the Twitter is the Myriathon. The YouTube or the Twitch, is also that. The YouTube is the Space Myriathon. If you search that on YouTube, we'd appreciate people subscribing, liking all those VODs that we put up there for these podcasts. Everything and anything you can do to support us is much appreciated. So please do consider giving us any sort of support you can. We really do appreciate it, and we are extremely thankful for that. Okay, so that's the intro for Myriathon at my end. So let us get right into it. So just to sort of recap last time, let's do a short recap. This is a normal thing. We're doing a recap episode before we start. Recap episode. Before we had talked mainly about the stories of the series. We talked about KH1, KH2, we talked about we talked about BBS
and
days, correct?
And a little bit of coded, but
yeah, the little that we know about coded.
Right. And then we touched on near the end KH3 a little bit. We really didn't talk much about it. And then and I think we did talk a little bit about Dream Drop, a tiny bit.
Yeah, we had some on Dream Drop,
right?
Some on KH3.
Some choice of words.
Some choice words.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's the recap episode for that. Also, this is a disclaimer for anybody who hasn't played the series in general, or like hasn't played KH3 like I hadn't before, for example. We will be talking about spoilers. If you're not into spoilers, probably shouldn't be listening. If you really are not someone who wants to get, you're just like really want to go in fresh, this might not be the time. I hate to say this is a good time to excuse yourself because we want your support here, but maybe finish up and then watch the VOD afterwards. Okay, now that everything is on the table, let's get this started. One of you guys, why don't we'll just skip ahead back to Dream Drop. Okay, let's just start from
Sounds
there.
good.
So one of you guys take it from here, whichever you feel is an appropriate starting point, considering where we're going to go on this.
Oh, geez. I don't know. I just remember Spoon had some interesting things he likes to say about this. So, I kind of want you to go, so...
Yeah, sure. If you guys saw the last episode, I do not like Dream Drop Distance. It is legitimately the only game in the series that I have played that I don't like.
Just fair.
Don't think it's a fun game. The story completely... It was complicated before that, but it completely jumps the shark in DDD with the time travel and the sleeping worlds. And everything else. And yeah, welcome to everyone in chat. I'm definitely seeing some names that I recognize, but not often here in the Myriacast. So thank you for joining us. But yeah, Dream Drop. I mean, it follows Sora and Riku taking their Mark of Mastery exam. They are tasked by Yen Sid to unlock the Sleeping Worlds, and it kind of spirals out of control from there. Sora's Mark of Mastery exam gets hijacked by Xehanort, and he nearly falls to darkness and is turned into a vessel. Riku somehow discovers this and becomes a Dream Eater and dives into Sora's dreams himself and saves him. That's the
Yeah.
gist of this.
Yeah.
That is the baseline first pass overview of the story of Dream Drop Distance.
And don't get me wrong, I feel like there's actually a few aspects of 3D that are kind of interesting story-wise, but then as soon as they bring in the whole, like, oh, Xehanort's going back in time, I'm gonna make, like, 13 artificial members of Data.org to actually still see through to the Keyblade War, it gets very messy very fast, and it's just kind of, like Spoon said, with how convoluted the series already is, it's like, why do we need time travel in this series now?
But it's here now.
Yeah,
It's here.
It is here.
it was complicated before they added time travel, and then they decided, why don't we just make it a little more complicated and throw time travel in the mix on this one?
But I
So
mean, yeah, it's too bad too because honestly, there's a few aspects about 3D that I actually kind of enjoy. Like I feel like the level design of 3D is actually pretty interesting. I just wish the worlds were not like so massive, I guess, for lack of a better word. I feel like the whole gist of like utilizing flow motion throughout the game and just kind of I don't know. There's just something that's kind of appealing about the worlds of 3D. Like I love what they did with Traverse Town. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion between people, but it's just like I don't know. I guess for lack of a better word, just like rooms are way too big in 3D.
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of areas in KH games prior to that, you kind of had like worlds with like 10 or 15 areas that would have like reasonable sized rooms where there's like 2 or 3 load zones in 3D, and there's like 3 or 4 gigantic rooms. I didn't really like that too much.
it was definitely a different approach. I agree in general, though. If I were to say one thing, a few things that I do like about Dream Drop Distance, it would be the level design. I think other than KH1, has some of the best level design out of the series before. I mean, I think KH3 maybe expands upon it more, but this was before KH3, so up to that point. Because yeah, in KH2 and in Birth by Sleep, Chain of Memories is different because of the way the castle works, but there had been a couple of games in a row where most of the levels were just basically hallways where you just walk forward from fight to fight. There wasn't a lot of exploration going on. There may be a chest tucked in the corner somewhere or something, but that was about it. Um, and for me, we talked about KH2 last time, so we're not going to go in depth on it. But for me, that works for KH2 because the combat is just so good in KH2 that it doesn't matter that much. But you did lose a little bit of the platforming and the exploration from KH1 going into KH2 and BBS and some of those other games.
That being said, I still think the linearity is a good thing when you have combat as like the main focus. Because
Yeah,
I know we're trying not to go like too far back into what
Mhm.
we explained last time, but it's like the creative level design was kind of a problem in KH1 for certain fights across that, and it just
that's
makes
true.
more sense for what they did going forward. And the nice thing I can say about 3D is I still feel like they kind of respect that in the sense of like they kind of do have free exploration, but they do also when you have I mean, if you even want to acknowledge the boss fights, they still kind of follow that premise where like the actual places where you fight the enemies are not like completely ridiculous by comparison.
Yeah.
You still have like a standardized sort of arena for the fights, which is good, but that's one of the only good things I can say about the combat, unfortunately.
Yeah, and as you said, like flow motion is cool and works with the sort of large areas and the level design of the game. It's a cool movement. It's pretty. It was their first go at it, so it makes sense. But it's pretty broken in Dream Drop Distance. You can spam it nonstop. There's no cooldown. There's no limit to how many times you can jump or dash off of a wall. Whereas in KH3, where they have flow motion, you can only super jump once and then you gotta land
Exactly.
basically. So, um, yeah, and I mean, and that's about where my niceties end with Dream Drop Distance, for me at least. Yeah, we. I don't know. Do we just want to dive into all of the mechanics, Mist, or do you have anything else to say about where we're
I'm
at
not
right
really
now?
sure because like it's kind of suffers. It's almost like we talked about like BBS syndrome last time,
Mhm.
where it's like they had so many commands,
Yep.
but like very few were like actually useful in combat by comparison. And the really unfortunate thing about 3D is not only does it suffer from the same thing, it kind of is even a more watered down version of that because there's only one particular move that people really know what that game is for, and that is the balloon ra command.
Yep.
It's like, I mean, and apparently there's also other stuff like, I heard some people in my chat saying it's also confuse, but it's like I rarely hear people talk about using confuse as that command in that game. So I mean, unfortunately, 3D has kind of stereotyped itself as like you use balloons to beat everything in the game, and unfortunately, that's kind of true. As much as I don't want to be that guy, but
I mean, if you've watched a speed run of that game, I have, or I've seen parts of it at least. I don't think I've seen the whole thing, but it's pretty much just mash triangle with balloon row the
so
whole time once you
unfortunately,
get it.
it's just a lot of options, very few are actually that useful when you have something like Balloon Ra at your disposal. So it's kind of unfortunate that it kind of gets done in by that.
Yeah, and I think it has a little bit of BBS syndrome as well with the actual Keyblade combat. Again, if you weren't here last time, you wouldn't have heard this, but in BBS and in DDD, your basic Keyblade combos do not feel good. Your Keyblade feels like a wet noodle. It just doesn't do any damage. It doesn't have any impact. It doesn't feel like you're hitting the enemy with powerful blunt weapon, which is what the Keyblade should be. Whereas, again, go back to KH1 and KH2, where the physical combos were basically your main form of dealing damage. And man, when you hit something, you're like, yeah, I'm whacking him with this key and I'm beating him down. So, and
I feel
it's
like the satisfaction when the enemy's going like, oh my god,
yeah,
that hurts. And so like, I mean, I guess you kind of get that too, but I mean, not so much. That's another big thing that some of like the Osaka team games, which is like the current team who's working on KH as of right now, is like a lot of their enemies, especially in the early days, they did not really stagger very well when
Mm-hmm.
you did certain moves, and that just kind of takes away from the satisfaction because basically every enemy you attacked in KH1 and 2, they had some form of stagger when you actually dealt damage, so it gave you time to really get in attacks and really, deal some serious damage, whereas it doesn't feel that rewarding in the later games along
yeah,
BBS and 3D's like stature.
yeah. You just spam the stuff that does the most damage, which in DDD's case, as you said, is balloon and then balloon row
Mm-hmm.
once you get it. Um, They also added a system in DDD where your party members are these creatures called Dream Eaters, and it's a I'll call it Pokemon style system. And again, I kind of went in on this last time, so I won't go too hard. I really don't like games that try to do Pokemon that aren't Pokemon, so I would much rather have actual characters as my party members instead of these
Do they
creatures.
talk?
And
Do
then
the
you're
do the creatures talk to you? I don't.
No.
no,
Oh, so
they
okay.
don't talk. You
They
you
like
can
they die a lot,
Oh,
but they
okay.
don't
they die
talk.
a lot, and you can pet them and you can play with them, and the more you use them and upgrade them, that's how you get your skills, and some of your commands come through these skill trees off of the Dream Eaters. Yes, try. I would rather have only Donald as a companion
Which I
to
mean,
Dream
honestly, I
Eaters.
kind of like the sort of innovative take on how you kind of get growth abilities, sort of in 3D. But I just wish that that wasn't really It's like the only real ability you need is like maybe second chance once more and like magic haste because
Magic Haste, yeah.
like if you have those three abilities, that's all that really matters, unfortunately, as well as
But
like other
I
boosts.
isn't it true that once if you don't have the Dream Eater in your party that you lose the I don't think you can like set the abilities unless you have the Dream Eater actually in your party. Or am I wrong about that?
Honestly, I'm not quite sure off the top of my head. That does sound like something that is a mechanic in that game, though.
Because I feel like I remember the last time I played it, I I went down some trees. I played through the game, not New Game Plus, just New Game. I got some. I'm like, oh, those are good abilities. Okay, I'll get those. All right, now I want to swap Dream Eaters to a different thing, and I'm pretty sure I lost those abilities from the ones that I had swapped out. So I could be wrong about that. Someone in chat, if you know DDD better than me, please correct me. I could be entirely wrong, but that's my recollection.
I also do enjoy that they encompass you to use more Dream Eaters because you can only get certain like abilities from certain Dream Eaters as the game progresses. But yeah, like I said, not a lot of them are very helpful, unfortunately.
So yeah, I mean, there's a few other things with Dream. They have super attacks from the Dream Eaters. They have this meter that fills up, and then you can do a super attack. Riku gets these transformations where it powers him up, and Sora's are just kind of cinematic attacks that happen when you do that. There's the drop system, which we talked about a little bit last time again. It's really dumb. I have like no idea why this exists. It's just it feels like a shoehorned in mechanic that gameplay wise there's just no reason for. They could have just had you swap between characters, between worlds or at certain points in the story. It's like, all right, you've gotten this far with Sora, now you need to go do Riku for a bit and play through with him. But instead, they introduced a mechanic where there's a meter, so you know when it's going to happen, but this meter just goes down as you play with one of the characters, and when it runs out, you get dropped to the other character.
And then if you're in the middle of a boss fight, were you gonna say that?
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Yeah, if you're in the middle of a boss fight, then you have to redo the boss fight. If you make it like the boss has like you're on its like last bar of health and it's almost dead up, too bad. You gotta play as the other character now, and when you play as the other character you just dropped as while you're fighting that fight, you gotta pretty much do the whole fight over again. So that's pretty obnoxious.
Yeah, I think we talked about that before, and that just sounds horrible. That just sounds like something I would be screaming at my television for.
I mean, the thing you do is just before you go into a boss fight, you go into your menu. You either just drop and go play as the other character for a little bit, or just go back, like go play as the other character and then just come back immediately. Because you can manually drop if you want from the menu. I think you just hit like triangle or something from the menu, and you can manually drop if you want, or you just equip a drop me not, which is an item that it restores your drop meter.
But then it's like it almost like defeats the purpose of the whole mechanic when you just kind of inevitably like put it off over and over again.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of it seems kind of silly.
The mechanic is just a nuisance. I don't know what possessed them to have this mechanic in the game other than to call the game Dream Drop Distance Kingdom Hearts 3D. So
it's honestly like the structurally it would have been fine if you just didn't have like intervals of that happening where it breaks up the gameplay really badly.
Yeah.
It would have been better if you, like you said, they just kind of had like scripted events where you drop and everything instead of like it just happening whenever and stuff. So,
I mean, yeah, or it just doesn't happen randomly, and you just get to choose when you drop. Like you can drop from a save point or something like that, or when you're in between worlds, like they let you drop, and then obviously at certain points you're gonna have to be forced to play as the other character. Yeah, and they did have a few scripted drops at a few points in the game, because you had to make enough progress with both characters to get through the game.
Eventually Sora becomes unplayable after a certain story event, so...
Yeah, the end of the game is with Riku, so... And then I guess the one other mechanic of the game that we can talk about is the dives, which are...
yes, our gummy missions for the game.
Yeah, the replacement for gummy ships, so... I've been talking a lot, so Mist, why don't you go ahead?
Basically the dives are the whole, like, they're meant to sort of pad the game out slightly as like, oh hey, here's this world specific drop. It's like, I think it's like Riku kind of has like more specific boss fight drops. I could be misremembering that, and like Sora's more like you have to collect a bunch of stuff and reach the end type of thing.
I think they go back and forth. I think they each have a couple of each.
Those are the two types of drops that you'll see throughout the game, and I mean, honestly, I didn't really mind it too much. Like, I mean, I guess it depends. Honestly, the only time I've enjoyed anything like that in the series is when we get to KH3 and we have like the free roaming gummy mission type stuff, because that actually felt like it was relevant to the game. It's like, there's always been like this sort of stigma where there has to be something before you do every single world. That's why everyone jokes about like, hey, BBS has the best gummy missions.
Because it doesn't
have any. Which, I mean, honestly, I feel like that would have benefited for 3D quite a bit more. But like you said, they wanted to kind of capitalize on the whole dream drop distance sort of thing. So I guess they
Yeah.
just want to be super gimmicky for the sake of being gimmicky. I mean, I guess they're not terrible, but like I said, like they're kind of just like the same thing with gummies in earlier games. They're just like, why do they really need to be here? It just kind of feels like padding for stuff that has no real relevance.
Yeah.
But I guess the like my biggest critique is whenever we have these and it doesn't really affect the normal gameplay outside of gummies or drops or anything. I guess the one thing I can say, at least you get like some kind of keyblade for getting like an A rank on everything, but it's like that's such a little compromise to have them like be relevant in some way. So
Yeah, if you get an A rank on all the dives, you get a really strong keyblade that I know the speedrun uses at the end, like they shoot for it. I think I just have a very negative perception of this game. The first time I played the game, I couldn't stand the dives either. I don't know why. I just found them obnoxious as well. Like, maybe I was just bad at them and I just crashed into every. I don't think I died very much, but I don't know. Like, the game just annoyed me and I found them just as obnoxious as the rest of the game. So,
yeah,
yeah.
not everyone's. I mean, I didn't mind them, but yeah, it's the same kind of thing. It's just like I don't really care for them either.
So yeah,
yeah.
I think we have.
that's all. I think that's about all I have to say about Dream Drop Distance.
So and basically, it's like Sora becomes, you know, he's meant to be this vessel for Xehanort, and he loses all of his powers, like, you know, because of that, or at least his, you know, whatever he built up between KH2, like from the start after he woke up in KH2 and all that, and that's why he's kind of back to his base stuff in KH3. But that's about it. And then
Pretty much.
Riku passes Mark of Mastery. Sora's still not a Keyblade Master because he. I mean, that's kind of lame to way to fail, but I mean, I guess whatever Yensid says or Nomura says.
Nomura said, "Go back to level 1."
Pretty much.
Go back.
And that's pretty much the end of 3D.
Kyrie and Axel get Keyblades, and Xehanort. Yeah, I mean, true, but they do get Keyblades. And Xehanort reveals that he's building a new Organization 13 with vessels, and he's time traveling. So yeah.
Okay, moving to 0.2.
0.2. Well, at the very least, I can say this is definitely an upgrade from what we're coming from 3D. Is basically it follows the events of Aqua after, I think it's pretty much the secret episode of BBS. I forget the exact like time frame it falls into. It's basically the game that takes place between BBS and KH1.
Yeah, I could actually never tell if it's before the secret episode or after the secret episode. It's somewhere in there, though. It's after BBS when Aqua falls to the realm of darkness. But yeah, I'm actually not sure on the timeline. Because I know at the end she gets to the beach where Diz is, or Master Ansem. Sorry, Ansem the Wise. And learns about Sora and all that. But I actually don't know which comes first, whether it's the secret episode in BBS or it's 0.2. But that's kind of irrelevant. So
all you have to know is it's just basically the middle game between BBS and KH1. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
And so pretty much this is it's basically a beta for Kingdom Hearts 3. Like when that came out, it was about 2 years prior to KH3's release. I think it was like January 2017.
Yep,
and then
that's right.
It was January 2019. So
yep.
It pretty much is meant to kind of get people inclined to how KH3 is sort of going to function. They advertised as like 0.2 is meant to be the length of like one KH3 world, which I mean I don't know how true that actually is in like modern time now with how people have done stuff, but pretty much it follows the like remnants of whatever worlds were in BBS from Aqua's standpoint. Like the worlds you see in BBS, Aqua goes through once again. She sees like these visions of Ventus and Terra, and you know, reconciles with everything that happened in the events and how she's here, and she's basically trying to fight her way out of the realm of darkness after succumbing to the whole thing that Xehanort put the trio through, and she went to the realm of darkness in place of Terra, which honestly was probably the worst thing she could have done. But yeah, it basically follows her perspective in the meantime between BBS and KH1.
Yep, and the game is pretty standard Kingdom Hearts fare. The options are a little bit more limited. Aqua does level up. You start at level 50 and you level up to, I want to say, around 60 or like 65 by the end of the like a single playthrough. And you have you pretty much start. You don't really get anything as you level up. You get stats, but otherwise you don't unlock any new magic. You don't unlock any new There's no abilities in this game. You just have what you have, and that's it. I'm sure your HP and MP bar grow as you go through it. And yeah, you have your standard magic. She has all the Aga spells, so Firaga, Blizzaga, Thundaga, and Curaga. She doesn't have arrow, does she? No, she doesn't have arrow.
No.
Um, and yeah, I think it's a cool tech demo for KH3. It looked really good for the time. Obviously, they did some tune-up between 0.2 and KH3. KH3 looks quite a bit better, but for, as you said, a beta or a tech demo for KH3, it looks quite nice. It plays nicely. Your Keyblade swings actually do something in this one as opposed to the previous Osaka games. But I think magic is still the way to go. In this one, magic is very, very powerful as it is in
Very much
KH3.
yeah, I was gonna say very much a precursor to what 3 ends up being. So I mean that's fair. But yeah, I'm just especially on the back of 3D. I mean, people had their own feelings towards it. Like it was still pretty mixed, but I certainly thought after I played 0.2, I was like, wow, KH3 might actually end up being a pretty decent game if this is like what they have going for it to start off with. And
Yeah.
that's pretty much how I feel about 3 as well now. I think it's actually a pretty decent game, and I'm not disappointed by it. But we'll get to that when we get to that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we're going to spend that long on 0.2. There's not that much to talk about. The
Yeah,
game takes
exactly.
it takes 3 or 4 hours to beat in a single playthrough, I would say, if you're watching all the cutscenes. And to get 100% in the game, it probably doesn't take more than like 10 or 15 hours. I don't know exactly, but it's not that bad. But yeah, magic is powerful. They also introduced in 0.2 the
Situation commands.
situation commands, which I guess was kind of they were building, they were kind of implementing a little bit with like what command styles were in BBS, where you had this meter that built up, and then you would get a command style when the meter would build up. In this one, you get a situation command based on what you did, either magic, so you could get a grand magic for any of the 3 base spells, and then you could get Aqua's kind of it was her Spellweaver command style from BBS, basically.
Which is basically meant to supplement what would end up being Keyblade transformations in KH3. But obviously, since I'm pretty sure she only has that one Keyblade for her whole game, unless I'm not remembering that very well. That really wasn't a thing, Keyblade transformations, so we just had Spellweaver, but yeah.
There's one other one when you have Mickey, you get like Wayfinder or something like that. That's like another style for her, but she you can only do it at the end of the game when you have Mickey in your party.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. I basically haven't played 0.2 since it came out.
Since it came out,
yeah.
But yeah, the game's pretty fun. The worlds are interesting. There's like these mini. It was kind of interesting because there were kind of mini puzzles in the worlds. You know, the first in the Cinderella world, which is the Castle of Dreams, you have to hit the different like clock things and turn back the clock so you can cross the bridge.
Kind of reminded me of KH1 in a way.
Yeah, there was a little more exploration going on. I agree with that.
Not as linear as prior games, which kind of made me happy.
Yeah, and then in the Dwarf Woodlands world, there were these different mirrors that you had to go through, kind of imitating the magic mirror, and there were a bunch of different puzzle rooms. There was one where the room would flip upside down, and then you'd have to hit the right pole. Like, it was actually an interesting like experiment, I suppose. Like, some of the puzzles were kind of interesting. There was a room that was this staircase, and there was a mirror at the end,
and then you had to turn around.
Yeah, and
that was a good one.
Yeah, it was a good troll. You kept running up the staircase, and if you just kept running forward, you'd never finish. And in one of the rooms, you had to turn around, and where you had to go was behind you. So yeah, so there were some interesting puzzles and such in it. I like the boss design. I think is pretty bad because there's dark sides, there's the demon towers, and then Phantom Aqua's cool. But other than that,
the Zodiac Aqua fight's actually quite good. I just wish you didn't have to go through the nonsense before it to get there.
Yeah, and man, actually, the one thing I will say about 0.2, high difficulties in the game suck. Like, I think on Proud as well, did they reduce your HP and MP in both Proud and Critical? Or maybe that was at
I'm
first
not.
and they patched it. I don't remember.
I'm not sure. I do remember one particular thing they did. I like because they actually did update 0.2 based off like feedback, like from what people played of it. And I remembered back then when you were using your magic, you know how in KH2 it like makes the magic spell text like orange if it's going to use the rest of your MP and stuff. Like if you're using magnet, like if you use one
Yeah,
more
yeah.
magnet, you're gonna go an MP recharge. They actually didn't have that in 0.2, and they actually patched in later that if you use it one more time, it's gonna put you an MP recharge, so you can plan your usage of combos a little bit better. So I mean, it's like it's good to be experimental, but also take the feedback and also
Yeah.
implement stuff that's a little more convenient. That's not really unfair in like to the enemies per se, but just allows for better strategy and concepts with what you're going for. And as far as like proud mode, I'm not sure if they altered anything, but if you played crit, you definitely felt like, oh my god, they gimp your MP so badly.
Yeah, crit is rough in 0.2 and in my opinion in KH3 as well when we get to it. But yeah, I don't have I guess the one other thing to mention, there were no abilities or equipment other than no, yeah, there was no even equipment menu. The items you picked up, you just could store all the items that you picked up. I don't think there was a shop either, so there was no money.
To be fair, though, it is the realm of darkness. It's like
Yeah, it makes
well,
sense. It's a very short game. Again,
Mhm.
it's basically a tech demo for KH3. It's pretty fun. There was this Aqua dress up mechanic thing too that, dress up your waifu in your favorite colors and
I most said we can't do that with Sora in KH3,
yeah, I know,
but
right?
oh well.
Um so yeah. I I think it was a cool tech demo. Um it's a fun distraction, I guess. It was a fun little thing to sort of whet our
Theorize about. Yeah.
whet our appetite for KH3. They did patch it a little bit, as Miss said. I think they actually changed the MP cost on some of the spells in one of the patches, actually, from what I remember. But so that got us hopeful. We're like, oh man, they're actually listening to our feedback.
hmm
When we say, hey, we don't like this, we don't like that, they're actually changing it. So
That's very
yeah,
much true when people are like, "Oh man, KH3 is so easy," and then
yeah,
we'll talk about what they did afterwards. But
yeah.
yeah, and pretty much the events of 0.2, Xehanort is still trying to snatch Aqua for potentially like another vessel for like the new 13 while she's going through the realm of darkness. And another premise that does get established is like time passes actually quite fast in the realm of light by comparison to the realm of darkness because as far as I'm aware, 10 years did not pass for Aqua,
Mhm.
like in actual real
No,
time while she was doing that. So, what you just kind of see by the end of her little stretch after BBS is she spent, I guess it's an undisclosed amount of time in Realm of Darkness, but it could have been more than like maybe like days to weeks or maybe like a month or two. Like I don't know, but it certainly was not the 10
that's what I
years.
wouldn't say. It's more than like 6 months tops.
Yeah, like
Like
it's like
that
she not
she's
to say
actually
she
there.
wasn't there for very long, but it's nowhere near as long as you might think it would be. And so she eventually gets through everything and she meets up with Mickey, which is a huge like plot hole, but because of like other stuff that ends up happening. She teams up with Mickey. They make it to the Destiny Islands after it's been corroded by darkness. And they kind of have like where you fight like Ansem and KH1 and stuff like that sort of like type of area.
Mhm.
It's the
But
Destiny Islands before you restore it in KH1.
mhm,
It's like during you go it basically during KH1 after Destiny
mhm.
Islands falls to darkness at the beginning of KH1 and before they defeat Ansem and restore Destiny Islands. So
And so they have like this huge thing called the Demon Tie, which is just a bunch of shadows. I'm sure everybody loves that thing, right? Yeah, of
yeah,
course.
it's a
Uh huh.
great boss.
I mean, yeah. Anyway, I was gonna say something to defend it. I was like, no, let's not. Um, and so they defeat that, and they miraculously open that secret door in KH1 just casually, and it made me kind of upset. Honestly, when they just like, oh hey, look, here's the door, and it's like, okay, and Mickey gets his true Keyblade, his like Kingdom Key D, like the golden one. Just like, oh,
Yeah.
so that's what's been behind there the whole time. And I guess it's meant to elaborate that that's kind of the connecting thing to the realm of darkness versus like Destiny Islands or something. I don't know, like what I that's just kind of what I gathered from that. And then all of a sudden, like they go through that door, and they've transported basically into the world of chaos, where Sora and the gang is taken to at the very end of KH1, and they're pretty much behind that big door of what is Kingdom Hearts, like from where Riku's side is. And this was the part of 0.2 a lot of people were just really annoyed about. It's like somehow Riku does not see Aqua during that whole thing, nor does Mickey feel like elaborating to the gang until much later after the events of KH1 what happened there. And also Mickey's shirt is just spontaneously like vaporized, I guess, from the friggin' Demon Tide. Because they had shirtless Mickey at the end of KH1. I don't know, Spoon, if you have anything to say. I'm just kind of ranting a bit right now.
Yeah,
but...
no, there are a lot of plot holes there. They, you know, yeah, as you said, Mickey's shirt just goes away so they can make that continuity from KH1 of shirtless Mickey in the Realm of Darkness, or
they could have literally just been like,
Hearts story.
Oh, hey, his shirt gets like ripped to shreds because of the Demon Tide. Like, I would have accepted that, but no, he just like it just gets vaporized.
It just it turns into sparkles and it's gone. It's like
what?
All right.
The worst thing they could have possibly done to fail the continuity.
Yeah, and then it definitely there was some plot holes there. Where, like, it doesn't really make sense that Mickey never mentions Aqua to them once until after KH2 at least, or right?
It might even be like after the
in DDD.
Yeah, potentially like somewhere between those two games. It's just like, what the heck, man.
So yeah, that's kind of weird, but.
And then it's like the Demon Tide forces Aqua back to the Realm of Darkness, like in the middle of that, before Riku can actually do anything. And obviously, since Sora's on, it makes sense that Sora would never see Aqua in this context, but the fact that Riku doesn't kind of gets to me a bit. It's really silly.
Yeah, I agree.
So Aqua's back in the Realm of Darkness. The whole thing with Riku and the King and Sora and the gang, they sealed the door to Kingdom Hearts in KH1, and then Aqua's just kind of left there like, I guess I'll die. just being left behind, forgotten about, until like Mickey actually decides to say something, and that's pretty much how 0.2 ends.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's 0.2. I don't have anything else to say about it, so I think we can move on to KH3, and we haven't heard from Otto in a while, so
we didn't talk about
Otto...
Union Cross though. Do we have to mention it, or can we mention it with KH3? I don't know.
There's only
I don't know much about
things.
Any of these other ones, to be fair.
Union Cross does not have a gigantic involvement with the main parts of 3, but there's like subtleties that kind of blend into it. So I mean, and also Union Cross is still in the process of actually being fully finished.
Okay.
Like with what they're so it doesn't really matter what we talk about. First, since 3 doesn't strictly pertain to Union Cross right now.
Got it. Okay. So then
I think
then KH3.
Union Cross exists. It's a mobile game. It's a gacha game. I mean, there's a lot of story that's gonna. Some of it weaves into KH3, and a lot of it's going to be relevant for the next arc of the story after KH3.
It's honestly some of the most interesting lore in the franchise, to be honest, based on like the whole, preparing for the inevitable Keyblade War that's going to happen, and all the other characters, and even seeing like the somebody variants of the nobodies we've seen from the organization actually have like their personalities, and seeing a lot of familiar faces in the previous time. A big one, a very hot topic, is Ventus being in Union Cross, and people have pretty much fixed together how the whole, how is Ven in current time compared to when he was in Union Cross 100 plus years ago from even the events of BBS happened. But yeah, Union Cross has a lot of interesting stuff of there's the whole Master of Masters, who is this kind of anonymous. We don't really know much about him aside from he's just I'm the Master of Masters, dude. I know everything. I have I can use this Keyblade better than anybody, and so that's kind of it. Unfortunately, we're not really meant to know that much about him yet. I mean, we're gonna learn much more about him in future games, of course, and it's just there's I think, let's see, 5 foretellers. And he also has, and as an apprentice,
there's 5 union leaders, and there's Lushu.
Right.
So 6.
So, and pretty much what Master of Masters has done, I think he's written this book of prophecies to kind of envelop what's going to end up happening, and they want other Keyblade wielders known as like the Dandelions to kind of like form groups and also just prepare them for when these events happen. And there's apparently some kind of traitor amongst everyone, but I think it's mostly it's basically been.
Oh, we lost Mist.
Yeah, I think we lost. Okay, we lost one of the team here. Mist is apparently like frozen or something. Wait.
Hello?
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
He's here. Okay.
Okay, he's back.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, see, the story is so convoluted, even like the connection can't.
Even Discord can't handle it.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I don't know where that broke off. Sorry.
It was about we were talking about the union leaders, and then you were talking a bit about the Dandelions, and there was a traitor. There was a traitor.
Yeah, there's a quote-unquote traitor in the group because there's like meant to be this one book of prophecies. There's like a copy of the book of prophecies going to like all the foretellers, but one has like the actual like last page or something.
There's a missing page.
There's a missing page. There you go. Yeah. And there actually is no traitor amongst the group, and it's Master of Masters just trying to like exacerbate tensions to kind of will the Keyblade War to actually happen.
Sure.
Is basically what has been developed. There really is no traitor, and everyone's just kind of at each other's throats over.
Yeah, the Master of Masters also, I guess, kind of important detail that leads into KH3. He has an all-seeing eye. Basically, he can see the future, and that's how he writes the Book of Prophecies. And his eye is embedded in the Keyblade that he gives to Lushu, who Lushu eventually passes on to Xehanort. Like, you recognize it immediately as Xehanort's Keyblade.
Right.
So yeah, and then there's the box, which we don't know what's in the box, but
something's in there.
The Master of Masters entrusts Lushu with taking care of this black box that has something important in it, and tells him to never open it. So I don't know.
We know the box is black. That is correct.
We know it is black.
I can't believe no one tried to open it yet. Like that's the crazy. Like I feel like curiosity would get the better of someone. But
maybe they did.
Maybe they literally can't. Maybe they literally can't.
Yeah, maybe they can't. Who knows? But I think that's good for Union Cross. If there's other things we talk about KH3 that we need to talk about from Union Cross, we'll get to it. But I think that's as deep as we need to go in.
The important thing to know is Lushu has been seeking over everything ever since that time, and that becomes relevant by the end of KH3.
Yeah, very relevant.
Yeah.
Very relevant.
And so yeah, we can pretty much hop into KH3 now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wanna start with Otto on this one because he's been sitting back.
Yeah.
He doesn't know.
Because I haven't played DDD or 0.2, so like I just sort of let you guys handle that. And
so yeah, you played KH3 recently, so.
We'll just go through the simple like premise at the start. So it starts pretty much right after DDD, right? I mean, like I'm not wrong on that. So. It starts right after there. Yensid basically cuts away Sora's powers because he failed, which I feel like is a bit cruel, considering like I just don't feel like it's his fault. But okay, Yensid in his so he cuts away the powers, and then Riku and Mickey are going to find Aqua in the Realm of Darkness. Is I think what their job is, and the Sora has to relearn the power of waking, which. It's shocking to me that I just discovered what that is today. So he's got to go through his relearning of how to, I guess, like reawaken worlds, so to speak. He like cleanses them. Okay, I'm just gonna say he cleanses them. So he's doing that. Mickey and Riku are going to find Aqua, and that's like there's really nothing to say. I have nothing else to say about the Disney worlds. The organization members show up. They talk about some stuff like that they feel like is important for every world, but it's not. And there's nothing to say for me. The Disney worlds are so disappointing. So after the Disney worlds is when the game actually begins, or the story really gets going. So then after all the Disney worlds, you end up getting. I forgot exactly what happens, but Sora ends up. I don't even know how to say this, but he goes to the Realm of Darkness.
He goes to Destiny Island.
He goes to Destiny Island first. That's right. So he goes there, and just like generally, I'm sort of like gonna fast forward because I don't want to touch on every piece right away. But like he ends up getting to Riku and Mickey while they're trying to get Aqua, who has been at this point. I don't know if possession's the right word, but she's starting to fall to darkness with
Norded.
Xehanort. Yeah, he's like Norded.
The terminology.
So she's been Norded. So Sora frees her with the Keyblade and all that, and then they then go to that's at that point. After that, they then need to go get Ven, who's in it's not Radiant Garden, it's the
Castle Oblivion.
Castle Oblivion, yeah, wherever.
Which is actually Land of Departure.
Which is Land of Departure,
after
yeah.
Aqua, yeah.
Yep. So they get Ven, and then they it just continues. Eventually, they'll get to the Keyblade graveyard, and then there's like this. They all, again, I said spoilers. They all
yes.
like it's just like all they all die, and then Sora goes into the final. It's called the final world, right?
The final world.
The final world.
Yeah.
He goes to the final world and meets with the Chirithy, yeah, and he like again. I don't want to go through specifics. He generally just like puts himself back together, time travels, which at this point I just don't care. I just shrug my shoulders, like, okay, we've already time traveled. It's a thing. Let's do it again. And he reverts the initial prophecy, which is they all fall to darkness, and he reverts it, comes back, and like you almost like go through the entire same process again towards the end, and that's where pretty much you get to your ending sequence with fighting all the I think that's where you start all the sequence of fighting the boss gauntlet, I guess is the organization gauntlet.
Organization members.
And yeah, I just like there's just so much for me that is just like I really like this game. I really do. But I liked the Disney worlds a lot in the other games. That was like, for me, it was a connection from my childhood, and it was something that I loved. For example, Toy Story was probably my favorite world in this game, and it might have been one of the best parts of the game for me to go through Toy Story World and the toy box, I guess. And like they nailed that. But then like you sort of realize at the end, like, what was the point of the Disney worlds? If someone can tell me what the point of all the Disney worlds really was, besides Sora learning the power of awakening, I'd love to hear it, because I still don't understand what it is. It feels like the last 25% of this game is when everything happens, and the previous 75% is just like padding to get to that point. It doesn't feel relevant at all. So
pacing in KH3 is one of the worst parts about that game, unfortunately.
Right.
They would have been much better off having just a section where you either go save Aqua or Ven. Like, at least just don't put everything at the very end of the game.
Right.
It's like you literally could have just skipped the first like 3/4 of this game, and you wouldn't have really missed anything on the story aside from, oh hey, where the new organization is back and everything, and we have all 13 vessels we need to actually do everything. And I have Ven's heart, I have Roxas's heart, I have Xion's heart, Sora does, and it's just like, okay, what is this weird feeling? Like you get little cutscenes like that kind of ease their way into what ends up being the climax,
right.
But they just, it almost kind of feels like, why even make that note there if you're just gonna dump everything all at once? It's better if there's like some kind of build up intention, so you kind of don't forget about it, but you're also just not like, you're super stressed about all this information being deployed all at once on you, So
it felt like, because I don't remember how long it took to beat the game for me, but it was like probably close to 25 hours. The last 6 hours of this game is when all the story came together, really officially. Basically right after the Disney World ended, the last 6 hours is just where everything happens. And when everything happens is pretty, it's well put together, to be frank. There's a couple complaints I have, but it's pretty well put together. It seems to like put things into place pretty nicely. It's a very like good sequence of events. Like the pacing there is actually like, a lot of things happen at once, but it's like pretty coherent, except for like a couple things that I've mentioned before in the podcast. Like, why is Xehanort a portal? That's like the weirdest thing to me. They're like, oh well, he's just a portal. Okay, sure, why not? I don't get it. If somebody gets it, that's great. Good, all the power to you. But it's just like weird that they just casually say that and everybody gets it. So like other than that, there's a lot of like good stuff at the very end though, and like the bosses I liked. I liked the bosses a lot, for me at least. Like they were casually speaking, like first time going through it, it was frustrating, but like once you figured out patterns, it really worked out well. Yeah, it's just like there's a lot of good stuff. I personally, I know you said you kind of like Gummy Missions Missed. I hate them.
That's fair.
I hate them. This one was not bad though. To be fair,
It's definitely the best of the main three.
It just feels like for me, I'd rather have like a skip option. It's like if you want to play a Gummy Mission, go for it. But can I skip it? I just prefer to skip it, to be honest with you. It feels like it doesn't add anything for me for the game, but it's not bad at all. It's really not bad at all. It controls just fine and everything. It's so like that's sort of like how I feel about the game. But and I didn't combat, like there's so many colors in combat. It's like I can't believe how many colors I'm seeing in these combats. If you have any like color blindness or something like that, like you're just I can't imagine what that would be like. There's just like all the attractions, there's all the Keyblade transformations. It's just like there's so much stuff every time you fight that's just like happening on the screen. Like it is very flashy. I do think it's cool that it's a callback to all the Disney attractions. That's cool, but it's so flashy. It feels so it's so pretty, and I think not necessarily in the best way. There's just so much. So, yeah, I don't know. Like that's how I feel about the whole thing packaged together. So
yeah, I mean, it's like, where do I want to go from here?
Any part
like,
of it. Any part of it. Yeah.
Honestly, I like KH3's gameplay quite a bit. It is a little bit unfortunate. It still is not quite as balanced as a lot of people would like it to be. Although I'll hold that thought for a little bit later, because there's something to say after the main game of KH3. But it's like they certainly have done a much better job as far as what's it called? Comparatively to BBS and like 3D, where they had just a bunch of abilities that really had no relevance and everything, like comparatively to like a handful of stuff that was just really good. I feel like a lot of people would still say like just use like shot locks, magic, and links and stuff, but that's still like a lot more versatility than like a lot of the other games had previously with Osaka Team's work. And I can at least also say, especially with Remind, they've made physical combos feel way better as far as like actually dealing with the enemies specifically. The whole Keyblade transformation thing as a mechanic is a little clunky. I wish that the situation command thing is also a little bit clunky in general, just because I wish kind of you could choose specifically which stuff you work your way up to, because the way it works, we touched upon Grand Magic a little bit in 0.2, and that's still true with KH3. Where you get like a level 4 magic if you like use level 3 magic to build up your situation command. But one of the most frustrating things I've had, and I'm sure a lot of people have had when they played 3, is they do like a bunch of magic. They do one physical attack, just one physical attack in their entire combo, right? And you don't get like the grand magic because it just some weird calculation thing.
You get the transformation, or even sometimes actually, if you mix up your magic, say. I have this happen to me a lot, just as an anecdote, in the speedrun in the Kingdom of Corona world. That not the first fight, the second fight in the world against the puff, those little puff enemies. You have Arrow and Thunder, and sometimes I use like Arrow and Thunder and I alternate them, and then I'll get Arrow guns instead of getting either Thundara or Aurora, and I'm like, I literally didn't do a single physical combo, and I got Arrow guns. Like, what is happening? Please, game.
Like, don't get me wrong, I don't think it's a bad thing if it offers that. I just wish it gave you a choice and not like a predetermined, like, this is the one and only thing you're going to get type of deal. I mean, you can build up multiple, situation commands, like, based on your... That's why they have, like, a time limit based on when you can use certain things, if you want to hold on to that, which is nice. But, I mean, I just kind of wish it almost didn't obey by that, and it just gave you a choice of which specific one you wanted to use in that moment, and if not, have like a limit on the amount of situation commands you could have and not have it be a time limit based sort of thing. But I mean, I still think it's a really interesting mechanic, and it's honestly integrated better than I expected. I just wish that there was more freedom of choice when it came to stuff like that.
The randomness of it is very annoying.
Frustrating.
Yeah, it's just because you say, I'm sure you experienced this when you were playing on. Say, you're using your physical combos with your whatever keyblade you're using, and you want to get your keyblade transformation, and instead you get Grand Magic,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, wait, what? Why?
And then you have to
Why did I?
restart that whole combo over
Yeah,
again to like build it
yeah,
up.
and your arrows are down at 0 now because you built up your arrows, so and you got Grand Magic, or you know, so yeah, the randomness of it is very annoying. I agree with Mist. I wish it was a system where when you built up your arrows, there was maybe a separate menu or something that popped up where you could select what you wanted out of a menu instead of just being like, nope, you get Thundaga, or you get
Mm-hmm.
Thundaza, or you get the Keyblade transformation, not just yeah, because it's completely it's not completely random,
No, you can tease
but
out some of it. You can tease out some of them.
there are cases where you'll spam magic or spam physical combos, one or the other,
Mhm.
and then get the other thing when you get a situation command, and it's very annoying.
It's just that there are moments in 3 you want to be doing both physical and magic, and it's just frustrating. Like when you want to work towards one, like you prioritize one type of move over the other to kind of coerce the game into giving you that specific thing.
Yeah.
And when you mix and match it, it could like even if it's like a very small percentage of your combo is the one you don't want, you can still get that, and that's a little annoying.
But then on the other hand, sometimes you do it and you get like 4 situation commands. You get Firaza, you get Thundaza, and you get your Keyblade
So I
transformation.
mean,
So it's like, all
it's like
right,
chaotic neutral kind
Yeah.
of deal.
yeah,
I
it's
don't
like what's
know.
going on? I don't. I wish there was a way we could see under the hood of this system on like how it calculates like what the
Mhm.
heck you get. But yeah,
The-
um,
I think the general implementation of it though is pretty solid. Besides just like,
Mhm.
okay, how do I tease out what in a specific way? Yeah, some like element of being able to say, okay, if can I get a choice even of just like with like maybe just like the example of the arrow guns? Can I get like arrow guns or something else? Just like a very simple 1-2 choice where there's just 2 options. You're already like navigating that menu, and it's not exactly like perfect anyway. You have to like constantly like multitask anyway. So why not add a couple extra custom options in there to be able to like like get optimal options besides just like
Mhm.
hoping the slot machines work in your favor. But you can cheat the slot machine to a certain extent, but like you really don't necessarily want that, especially when you're trying to do something very like you're trying to do a very tight set of tactics.
And I do understand that there is already quite a bit going on in the game
Mm-hmm.
in that of itself. So having that extra little thing might be a little bit disorienting because
Mm-hmm.
it's just like okay, in a sense, it's kind of a good thing it's predetermined. So it's like okay, that I got that. Now
Yeah.
I can just like I can
just
just have that in reserve for whenever. But
Right.
it's like
just press the fun button and do your
Really, I
thing.
mean, like
uh,
that general implementation is fine for like a
mhm.
more casual approach. Like if you're just playing
Yes,
through it,
definitely.
and you're just like, for me, like I appreciate that. Like I just okay, I know the fun button's on, got it.
As a speedrunner, though,
Exactly.
It's
So like
frustrating.
you want a bit more,
mhm.
yeah, you
Control.
want
I
some
want more
control. You want lots of
control over
control and
what I get.
Because
Uh,
if you've seen a cage spin, you know that we're just amazing at multitasking like 5 different things, micromanaging at
oh
once. So like that would not be an issue for us, but I can
yeah,
understand the casual
and
side of
and
that
and we
definitely.
very much like our consistency in our strats and
Hmm.
not RNG.
right,
RNG no good in speedruns. We want consistency in
right.
our strategies.
But I agree.
Um,
The combat's great actually. Combat feels good for the most part.
It's
Obviously, like
certainly
besides the slot machine, but like yeah,
certainly the best since Cage 2.
yeah,
A lot of
it's
people say
very
that's
well.
not saying much, but I'm just happy we're back on that path,
Yeah,
as far
yeah,
as like quality. Like, is it as good as Cage 2? Definitely not.
nope.
Is it something I was happy to play? Yes.
It's
Like, and
fun. It
it's the first Cage game I played in a while. I was actually pretty content with everything across the board.
yeah,
yeah.
it was good. Mm, the combat's great, and like as I said before, like kind of weaved into it. The bosses, like not just the world bosses, obviously. Like I meant all the after all the world's bosses were pretty, like it was well implemented to be able to take all the stuff, the tactics that you built up from the worlds, and say, okay, some parts of it there's a bit of a difficulty, spike,
Absolutely.
but it's like okay, if you're if you're paying attention and not just slamming your controller on the ground, you'll probably be fine. Which is for me, like, I think that's part of the combat. Is like, okay, if you've implemented all the combat aspects well enough, your bosses should feel like you're using everything you've been learning to.
And for most part, I would say like that's the case with Kate. Like there's definitely those handful of fights Skull, but there's like that some solo fights are not really that good. But honestly, I think where the game shines is definitely a lot of like the one-on-one types of fights, especially when you get to like the Remind DLC. But the only thing I'm really not a big fan of, much like a lot of people, is the mob fights in this game are pretty bad. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to say Cage is really known for having good mob fights, because even in Cage 2, like, I mean, 1K Heartless, that's a pretty awful fight in general. But it's like, I can't help but feel, especially in the earlier parts of 3, a lot of the mob fights, when you just have like 20, 30 Heartless / Nobodies / Unversed you have to fight, it's just like, my god, especially if you play on critical mode, like, it is ridiculously punishing.
I'm sure.
Just like you don't pay attention to this one dude doing this really minor attack and you're just dead. You know, it's really really not fun to go through that. I still enjoyed critical mode to a decent extent, but it definitely has a really rocky start. It definitely gets better as you get through it, though.
Yeah, I won't say I didn't enjoy it because it's still playing Cage 3, but especially compared to Cage 2, I don't like critical mode in this game. I just think that you can't keep track of 30 enemies at once, and as Miss said, especially early in the game, pretty much everything one-shots you. So if you have an enemy behind you that's doing something and hits you, you die.
That's it.
So, and the toughest fight for me in critical mode was actually the doll boss fight in Toy Box. That one whooped my butt to Kingdom Come for a couple hours before I beat it.
I raged so hard because I'm just like, dude, like, and also Kingdom Hearts 3 critical mode, or better title, Kingdom Hearts 3, every character besides Sora dies in 2 seconds, so solo every fight.
Yeah.
It's just like your party die. Like, I mean, I guess your party has been known to die pretty quickly in proud mode or critical mode for the other games, but it's like literally when the doll fight starts, she does that one attack, your entire party dies if you block it.
She jumps in the air and slams the ground, so your whole party dies.
Almost a party wipe at the start of the fight, aside from Sora. It's just like, dude, it's like
that fight also has those that fight has ads. It has those like pig toys that are bouncing around. Those things one shot you in that fight.
They're worse.
So,
they're worse than the doll. Honestly, anything that's just like strength in numbers, man. Strength in numbers is such a big thing for action games like this.
Yeah. I feel like early in the game in Cage 3, your options are so limited in terms of crowd control. You're pretty much just like, give me an attraction so I can wipe the room, please. Because that's pretty much all you have.
Learn to use counter shield.
Yeah, and counter shield.
You're going to need that for early game. I don't understand how you're supposed to get through otherwise.
And then the water cuff link and waters. Though I guess situation your MP bar is so short and situation commands build so slowly in critical mode. That's the other thing, by the way, that I forgot that I hate about critical mode. Why do situation commands build slower in critical mode? It just makes
because it's harder.
Yeah, because it's harder. Spoon,
but
it's artificial difficulty.
Yeah, it is artificial. That feels like one of those things where if this was Cage 2 critical mode, situation command would actually build faster in critical mode
to
compensate for the higher difficulty. Because in Cage 2 critical mode, you take proud mode damage, and your MP and health aren't halved off the start, but your gains for MP and health are halved. So any boss fight that would give you MP or HP in that game is halved. So basically by the end of the game, you have half as much HP as you would at the end of the game in any other difficulty. And you take proud mode difficulty. So again, early in the game in Cage 2, you pretty much get one or two shotted by pretty much everything. And that actually holds through most of the game in Cage 2. But the mob fights aren't quite as crazy. There are not as many enemies on screen. And I guess where I was going with this, the game gives you a ton of extra abilities at the start that help compensate. And Cage 3 has a few of those.
Not enough.
Yeah, there's not enough. Like, you start with aerial recovery, which early in the game doesn't
Very
matter.
good.
'Cause you, I mean, it's good, but early in the game it doesn't matter because you die in one hit. So,
Fair enough. But it's like those times you don't die though. It's pretty nice.
but yeah. But by the way, that was one thing. Man, F the first 2 worlds in KH3 because you don't have aerial recovery, not on critical mode. Because, jeez.
Well, you don't
And
like
then,
having to wait through the whole animation of you being stunned in the
no,
air. Come on.
I
God,
don't.
It's
I
stun-
part of
don't
the
at
it's
all.
part of the
walking.
fun. It's part of the fun.
God.
Now you know how a boss feels when we fight it.
And then there's the critical counter, which gives you extra damage on reprisals if you time it just right, which is again, it's cool for like a skill based thing
Hmm.
for critical mode. And then there was a thing that everyone asked for, which was you can turn off attractions, which
Which is
again,
ironic.
I don't know
Because,
why would you do, because early in the game you need attractions to clear those mob fights.
It's
So,
hilarious because I actually turned it off immediately when I started crit, and then I got to that fight when you first get to Mount Olympus, like what are they called, like the satyrs or something.
Oh
like
yes.
Satyr, yeah,
Oh my
like
Satyr
goodness.
the
fight.
football
The armor,
guys.
the first
football
armor
field.
fight.
It's
Yeah.
the football
Yeah, the
field.
football.
Yeah,
Football
it's
field.
like you want I don't understand how you could ever do that fight without, and like I guess like attraction maybe not be the specific thing. I thought it also disabled like other moves from your party. I could be misremembering that.
I don't think it disables team attacks. I think it only
Maybe not.
disabled attractions.
But it's like still for certain things, it's like why would you not want that? Because like you can't die during attractions. You can get damage down to like 1 HP, I think, right?
Yeah, you do take damage, but you
But you
can't
don't
die.
die in them,
You
so I
can't
mean
die.
there's no harm in actually like going through that entire thing
Right.
anyway. And also it's most of them are pretty much like AoE. They attack multiple enemies simultaneously while you're also, focused on one specific thing. So it's like funnily enough, it's available in critical mode, but it's when attractions are like the most useful, especially in the earlier parts of the game where you just get wiped so fucking easily. I'm so sorry for my language.
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm
We had
just.
a
And that's your
we had a
one.
slip.
And that's your one.
Everybody gets one.
But like that's just to explain how frustrating it is, though.
Yeah, I agree. I find critical mode very frustrating occasionally. I did beat it. The doll was the worst fight for me. And like once you get past the early game, it's really not that bad. You can take more than one hit, and
Also food.
yeah, also food. And then you get access to links, and you just start like spamming links and stuff like that. Because yeah, that stuff's it's safe. B, it's the most links are actually the most efficient use of your MP in critical mode because you have half as much MP and a link takes all of your MP and you need a full MP bar on any difficulty to use a link. So yeah, I mean yeah, I don't like critical mode in KH3. If you do, more power to you, I guess. I don't think it's good compared to KH2 where again I'm kind of I mean, I'm a sucker for KH2, but I love critical mode in KH2. It's such a good balance of very challenging difficulty. You die very quickly, but for the most part, it feels very fair. If you play well, you can beat it.
Yeah.
And they give you the tools you need to deal with the increased difficulty from critical mode.
One thing I will say I do enjoy about crit though 4-3 is like because a lot of the problems do stem from like having a bunch of like minor enemies just like swarming you and everything, but the specific fights in 3 where it's only like one-on-one, like I love the anti-aqua fight in critical mode a lot.
Yeah.
And like the final Xehanort fight as well, like those are where critical mode shines because that's like what the whole balance and like difficulty is meant to be like. But when you have all of the swarms of enemies and everything, it just feels like almost artificial difficulty because how are you supposed to keep track of all of that? When you have one centralized force that is like the big enemy and you can react and block and dodge like consistently, that's when it gets really fun to play on the higher difficulty because it feels very rewarding to survive and actually win the fights. But I just wish there were more moments like that in the actual main game of KH3 because it doesn't feel satisfying enough.
Yeah, too bad 90% of the fights are either giant mob fights or big unstaggerable enemies. Like a lot of the bosses are just these big monsters that okay, I mean they just do what they want. You hit them when you can. I don't know, like
that's pretty much it. All the one-on-one stuff that you really want from the combat, frankly, is at the very end of the game when you actually start to get those organization members. Not necessarily 1v1 fights all the time, but Yeah, the most rewarding fights for me were the end ones. They were so rewarding.
Definitely.
Okay, I have to rant. I'm sorry. I forgot about this too. I need to rant about this. Do you guys like mini games in these games? I am genuinely asking both of you. Do you like the mini games in this?
I don't like them. I don't hate them.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of there. There are some of them that I think are stupid and pointless, but there are others that I think are fun. Some that are like it's a very mixed bag. Like I will agree there's probably too many. We could do with a few less mini games in the game, but go ahead, Otto.
I hate him.
What you were gonna say?
I hate him so much. Olaf triggered me more than anything in any game could have triggered me in my life.
He was so angry.
I was so mad.
Gosh.
I can't tell you how mad I was at
ridiculous.
Olaf. And it seems like a minor thing for everybody.
It's not.
It's not. I have very little patience for things that just I feel like have no purpose, which is why I didn't like
or
the
just
Disney
wasting your
It's
time.
Just this just feels like a waste of time because you couldn't think of anything.
Literally, it was.
Yeah.
Like, especially because you have to do it a second time if you go back there. It's just like...
That world had just like the weird... The sledding I actually didn't mind too much. I count it like a mini game, but it's just like... Yeah, the Olaf part for me... Normally when I get upset at video games, it's because it's like I've gotten to like a brick wall, so to speak. Olaf made me more angry than I've ever been in my life about something.
Same, TBH.
And it was just like I couldn't believe okay, yeah, and the crabs also, but I couldn't believe somebody sat down and thought, yeah, this will be fun. People will like this. And yeah, the crabs thing. The crabs thing wasn't as egregious though, because it's like okay, you have to collect them, but there were like areas where there were tons of those like crabs you could
and there
get
was actually like combat and enemies to fight
enemies.
during the crab
collection.
Yeah,
it was like it was kind of nice, but yeah, the Olaf thing made me so angry. I'm sorry, I had to bring this up. It's just like there are certain things about this game that really make me upset, and that was easily number one on my list. Olaf, I wished Olaf we just left him there.
Me too. I remember that I was doing my first playthrough and I was doing post game and I went back there and they're like, "Oh, Sora, Olaf got separated again." I literally screamed into the microphone and my chat just like laughed so hard.
Oh my gosh!
I was like, "No, I don't want to do this again.
Please not again.
I don't care if I don't want your stupid Mega Elixir. I mean, that's nice, but it's not worth it."
Yeah, the Tangled one, like the rhythm game one, I didn't like it at first, but I kind of like it now because it obviously ties into the movie a bit more.
Yeah.
But that one's like okay. It's kind of short. It's
I actually like that minigame. It's very simple. I
do too.
Like I like that minigame. I think it's fun.
Yeah, but yeah, the Olaf thing. Yeah, there are more things I could say, but they're a bit more too explicit. So we'll skip that. But yeah, like I just feel like minigames. Please, if you're gonna put a minigame in, give it a good purpose. Make it actually fun. Don't make it Olaf. Thank you. Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I mean, otherwise, honestly, Cage 3 I thought was a pretty fun game from start to finish. Definitely had its problems, and I mean, people will say stuff like it's the best one since 2, but that's not saying much. But I mean, at the same time, it was like what, almost 13 years difference between like when Cage 2 and Cage 3 came out. So I mean, I'm just happy. Like I said, we're kind of on that pathway. Like Yeah, I'm interested to see like what the future games hold and like have in store.
None of the other games between Cage 2 and Cage 3 feel anything like Cage 2 until Cage 3. And Cage 3 is still quite different from Cage 2, but the base Kingdom Hearts combat that is in Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and 3, it's there. It's the command menu, there's no command deck or anything else. Actually, apparently, interesting anecdote. Apparently, when they were developing Kingdom Hearts 3 early on, they were going to do the command deck system at first for Kingdom Hearts 3. Like, Osaka team was planning on doing command deck for Kingdom Hearts 3, and this was when I think Nomura was still working on Final Fantasy 15 or something else at that time, and Papa Nomura came in and was like, nah, dog.
Nah, fam.
You put the command menu back in. We ain't doing Cage 3 with this crap command deck. Like,
just walked into the room, opened the door, no, and closed it.
No, gangsta until Nomura comes in and be like, no, you can't do that.
No. You can't do this to Cage 3.
It's like I like about 3 though. It kind of encompasses like the highlights from the other games in a way. Like
yeah,
like I like that we can now we can use like items in the air and stuff, and we can block in the air as Sora, which is something that we couldn't really. I mean, I guess we had Reflect we could use in the air in Cage too, but it's like besides that, like
And mid combo as well. You could cancel your combo with a dodge roll or a guard at like
that's honestly one of the
any
best
point
things.
in Cage
One of the
3.
best things about the combat in that game is being
So
able to.
yeah.
If you might be a bit greedy and you notice you're about to get destroyed, you can actually like dodge at the last second and actually recover from that. So I mean, that's really good. Like, I feel like structurally as a whole, with all the like potential you can do to chain combos and everything, it's quite nice. It's a very refreshing take, and be having more accessibility to other things and a lot of move potential really does make H3's combat pretty fun to experiment with. I just wish you didn't have to wait so long to have as many good resources to really play around with as well.
Yeah. So
And they just went. I'll say one more
Yeah, no,
thing.
go
They went
ahead,
a little too ham with the flashiness, and along with that, because of the flashiness, the huge mob fights. There's just so many mob fights with just. It feels like hundreds of it. It's not hundreds, but it's like 20 enemies at once, and then another wave of 20 enemies. It's like, and the only way to deal with it is an attraction or grand magic or Keyblade transformations in some case do some pretty good AoE, but the base physical combos are not good against these mob fights at all because they don't have any AoE. So you really need to get into the fun button, so to speak, in order to deal with these big mob fights. And I wish they would just tone back the scale, tone it down a little bit, back to more like not necessarily. Obviously, as you said, one-on-one's the best, and I agree with that. But like, let's maybe have like 5 to 10 enemies on screen as opposed to 20 to 30, right? So
I don't want to like cut this short, obviously, but I want to give you guys time to talk about the speedrunning stuff of all these different games.
And we haven't talked about the DLC yet either.
So
yeah, we should probably move on.
Let's move
So
on
it's
to
like,
the DLC, and then like because I want to give you guys, frankly, like almost half an hour to give you guys space for that. So let's move to the DLC. If there's other stuff we want to like package in from K3 as well, I mean, I would do that. But you guys played the DLC. I didn't. You guys go ahead.
So pretty much by the end of KH3, the main things that have happened, you've actually defeated the next organization in Xehanort and Ericus. They've moved on, and the trios are meant to be back together. Except Kairi kind of lost her heart for real this time, and now she's missing in action. Which I mean, obviously, most people didn't really care that much because Kairi's kind of been shafted ever since basically the end of KH1. But
I really want to like Kairi, but man, they did not do her justice in KH3.
Really
it sucks.
They just don't. They're just like, oh yeah, we're gonna make the player feel constantly like she does nothing. Like,
we need like an actual like decent game where she's kind of the main protagonist to kind of give her some light, because like that kind of segues into Remind a bit, because there is one fight she actually is a part of where she's actually kind of fun to play as. But so basically Sora's like, no, we're gonna get Kairi back, and he does his whole thing where he revisits the final world again, uses the power of waking, and he's kind of screwing up the timeline again because Kairi's not supposed to be a part of this after everything has happened. And essentially, he kind of goes back and goes through the whole events of Keyblade Graveyard again as like this kind of ghost that no one else can see. So he pretty much goes through all those events. You can play as all the other characters from the specific fights. Like you can play as Riku during the Dark Riku and Xigbar fight. You can play as Aqua during the BBS fights. You can play as Roxas even during the Psyx fight and everything, which is pretty awesome. And eventually just leads all the way back out to that part where you get to Scala. And you can actually explore Scala a considerable amount, and you're kind of finding like fragments of Kairi's heart across this other entity of Scala as you're going through it. And Sora basically gets it all, but I forget the exact thing that happens, but he doesn't do it fast enough when the timeline meets up again, because he actually makes it to Scala before the group normally makes it to Scala, before you fight the Xehanort clones again, and that whole sequence unfolds. And he kind of has to become one with himself from the past again. Trust me, it's not this convoluted. I promise. It's more, and essentially, I don't know. I kind of want to give Spoon a little bit of time to talk, but
no, go ahead. You understand the story better than I do. You do it, dude. You got it.
It's like so far, and while this is going on, we kind of see the other perspective of the other group, kind of like holding off the darkness as Xehanort is kind of achieving what he wants and kind of resetting everything back to darkness. and the other clones of Xehanort in the midst of the final fights that Sora and the gang are going through. They basically have these other versions of Xehanort that are kind of escaping, but they contain. And then it's like, oh my god, I'm going off on so many tangents right now. But essentially, the other rest of the group fights what else is happening outside of Scala, and they all get defeated. And they get sent to like these different dimensions through other like openings in like the space and time and other stuff. And Mickey still manages to survive, and he's actually able to hold off the other last bits of the Xehanort clones because he's like basically the last like source of light that's preventing like darkness from spreading, I guess, for lack of a better explanation. And Sora, because he's going through this whole process with the power of waking, he's actually able to confront everything alongside Mickey and basically unlock everyone who gets lost in that brief moment where Xehanort is actually winning, and then he reconnects everybody's hearts after finding all the fragments of Kyrie's heart and everything, and he's essentially able to bring Kyrie back to the final world while also not having Xehanort spread darkness after initially winning, quote unquote. And because of all the events that happen, there's like this one last entity of Xehanort that Sora and Kyrie actually face together because now she's back in this new sort of timeline. And they're victorious, and Kyrie essentially is able to be brought back into the normal timeline based on what Sora has done. And like, because he did so many things that he shouldn't have been able to do from the power of waking, he kind of disappears, and now he's in this sort of limbo between like the final world and wherever else he may be. So essentially what Remind does is it explains how Kyrie is back and why Sora is now gone.
Yeah, why he disappears.
Because if you just see the ending of 3, you're like, what happened? You know? Like,
Yeah,
why is Sora just gone?
How did he save Kyrie, and why did Sora disappear? What happened?
He just disappears.
And surprise, like I know, and this might be unpopular, but surprisingly, it's like I felt like Remind kind of made sense after like that explains like why he's gone away. Like not much more sense. But it's not just like, oh, he's just randomly gone. Like now, there's at least a reasoning for like why this has happened.
It definitely added at the very least. I don't think it. There were definitely some weird, multiple dimension timeline things going on, but I think other than that, it added a lot of good context. It also added some context to some of the other fights as well, like where they explained a little better like the replicas and like how Roxas and some of the other people who came back, like they explained that a little bit better in some of those fights as well. So that's nice. And then obviously about how they got Kyrie back and why Sora disappears. So I think it's confusing at parts, but I think as a add-on to Cage 3, and it does a good job of adding a little bit more context to the ending of the game. So.
But now we talk about the really good part of the DLC.
Yeah.
So
and I'll just real quick. Remind takes maybe like 4 hours or so to beat with watching all the cutscenes, obviously. So it's not super long.
But now, after Remind, you unlock this cool little thing called the Limit Cut episode. And what Limit Cut is? Did you do the post game in KH2 Otto by any chance?
Oh gosh, no, I don't think so.
Are you aware of what Cavern of Remembrance is in KH2?
Not particularly, no.
It's okay. But anyone who has done that would know that basically what Limit Cut is, it's kind of a throwback to the super boss gauntlet that Cavern of Remembrance.
Okay, I've heard of this actually. I know of it.
It's this thing called Data Org or the Data Organization, where you get to the very end of Cavern of Remembrance and you basically can fight like a juiced up version of every organization member in the game. And Limit Cut basically it taps into the computer in Hollow Bastion that kind of replicates like a data version of Sora, and also the fights that happened in the course of KH3. So essentially what you have is a data org. As weird as that sounds. And you basically, it's the same premise where you it's a super boss gauntlet of the main organization 13 from KH3. So you have the versions of all of them are versions of Xehanort. You have young Xehanort, you have Master Xehanort, you have Syx, Xigbar, Dark Riku. Oh, you're keeping track? Oh no.
Zemnis, Ansem, Larxene, Marluxia, Luxord, Terranort, Vanitas,
Xion.
And Xion. Yeah.
And you get 13 very different fights actually, and quite frankly, I would say a lot of people refer to it as the Osaka redemption story. Because it is quite possibly the most fun time I've had playing a Kingdom Hearts game my entire life. I'm not exaggerating when I say that.
These are, I agree with Miss. These are some of the best boss fights I've
Oh,
ever played in
easily.
definitely in any Kingdom Hearts game. I like them better than KH2 Data.org, hands
Me
down.
too. Me too.
And maybe some of the best boss fights in like any game ever. They're super well designed. They are very challenging. Even on, I played them on Proud 99 the first time because that's what my file was. But even on beginner, I've heard they are challenging. So
Especially,
beginner 99. So yeah,
especially since they introduced this mechanic that as far as I'm aware, they haven't done this before. A handful of bosses, including the secret episode boss Yuzora, but not right now. They have this particular set of moves that actually drain your max HP, which means that when you get damage, you don't actually take damage
Oh gosh.
like it doesn't subtract from your max. It actually makes your max HP less as you get hit, and you can get brought down all the way down to 1 HP. So
which means
basically,
that your
even if you're
withstand
playing on
combo
beginner mode,
once more doesn't work.
Oof.
even if you're
Also.
playing on beginner mode, you can still die in 1 hit. Like
Jeez.
after all that's happened, and it's like I can't believe it took so long for them. Like that's always something I'm crying out for is like innovation in games like this, you know? And it's like I can't believe we've never had a mechanic like that. And I just remember the first time I fought Shion, and my jaw like dropped to the floor. I was like, "What happened to my HP? This is
Yeah.
crazy!" And it's like, wow, that's such an amazing take. And I mean, like Master Xehanort and Yuzora do this as well, but it's just like I was so pleased with all of the fights. Maybe not Luxord because auto targeting in that fight is kind of a joke.
Yeah, it's
and
right. I
I
like
don't
the
know.
concept of the fight, but yeah,
Yes,
the targeting has gotten me killed more than once in that fight,
absolutely.
and
And
it's
it's
very annoying.
besides that though, I love Data.org to death, and I think it's one of the most like I said, I think it's the most fun time I've had playing a KH game in pretty much my entire life. And if that's any sign of quality, as well as Yuzora, really good boss fight as well, and very rewarding once she figures stuff out. And kind of a segue sort of into Union Cross for like the later saga, but I mean, who knows where we'll go from there. Um, yeah, very much. I'm very pleased with what they've produced, and I guess my only thing I would say is I wish the main game was as fun to play as Limit Cut, but Osaka team knows how to design super bosses, and if it's any sign of quality moving forward, I am very much looking forward to seeing what they do next with the series.
Yeah, they're super fun. I didn't like Syx very much myself. I just like didn't find his openings very well, I think, and his DM lasted so long, and I was like, geez, can this that fight felt like a slug to me. But other than that, I enjoyed all the fights. Um, and yeah, Yazora's amazing. He's technically not part of Data.org, but he's my favorite fight of the super bosses. Yazora is such a cool fight. Um, and the other thing that they added with the DLC was the easy codes and the pro codes, which they added to. You can actually activate them on a new game file now in the Dive to Heart segment. But basically, they're a thing that can. They're kind of what they sound like. The easy codes make the game easier. You can turn on things like one shot mode where you just one shot everything, and then and stuff like infinite MP or like your links last longer, stuff like that. And there's also stuff there. There's a couple of codes for like the shop. Everything in the shop costs half as much, so that's cool for grinding. And then there's one for it just unlocks everything in the gummy ship, so you can get the golden highwind right off the bat and really not have to deal with anything being difficult in the gummy ship in the main game. So that's cool. And then the pro codes make the game harder. There are things like reducing your stats to level 1, a limit on the number of abilities you can equip, no cure, no items, no Keyblade transformation. There's one that's like no attractions, no Keyblade transformation, basically no fun button. There's a pro code for basically
No
for
fun
each one of
button.
The
the
pro
things.
codes,
There's no fun button.
yeah, the
Yeah.
pro codes are mostly meant for Data.org, it seems, because main game has a very hard time in quite a few areas
Yeah.
utilizing those. But honestly, pro codes on Data.org is extremely fun and very much worth doing if you're going to do them at all. So
Yeah.
DLC,
And one
pretty good.
Yeah, one more thing they added to the the DLC that is also part of what makes the data org fights fun. They added a bunch of new combo modifier abilities to Sora's base combos, and it just makes them much faster, feel way better, do more damage, and yeah, I mean it makes them. They added some abilities like straight out of KH2 basically,
Yeah.
and
It
they just
basically
yeah, they made Sora feel much more like KH2 Sora in the
exactly.
base
That's what I was gonna
combo
say.
stuff.
I couldn't believe I was playing the same game, to be honest.
Yeah, so they did some things to improve base Sora quite a bit, and yeah, I agree. The fights are really fun. If you're into super bosses in Kingdom Hearts, I 100% recommend buying the DLC. If you're not, then I don't recommend buying the DLC. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think now we just talk about the speed running side of things from your guys' perspective.
Yes.
Okay. I would say maybe. I don't know exactly the list of all the games you guys have done. I know Spoon, you've done 1, 2, 3. I don't think you've done any others though. And
I've done 1, 2, and 3.
you've done
Yeah.
1, 2, and 3, and then missed. Maybe just you guys can focus on those ones.
Yeah.
Unless you've done like extra ones there.
I suppose I've done like common BBS,
Okay,
but
common.
yeah, 1, 2, and 3 as well.
Got it. So I've seen Spoon do these speedruns, so like I've seen 2 for the most part. I actually watched some when you did 3, Spoon. I did watch a little bit of that. And it's not as much of 1, so but I think what might be good rather than just like info dumping everything, because there's probably a lot, is I don't know which game you want to start with, but maybe start talking about like specific, I don't know, like specific aspects of it that like are sort of like the main thing that you carry over throughout the entire run, and maybe talk a bit about what's the most challenging parts from each of your perspective, like because I'm curious to hear the differences from each of your perspectives more than anything.
Okay, well, for starting off with, I guess I'm primarily a Kingdom Hearts 1 runner, and I was kind of searching through a lot of other games when I first got into speedrunning, like around 10 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long. My God. And I actually started with like the Zelda series a little bit, and I kind of worked my way into playing the KH series in the speedrun fashion, because I thought to myself I was originally going to run KH1, but I didn't want to because you couldn't skip the cutscenes in PS2, and the PS3 version came out and you could skip the cutscenes, so that's kind of where it went from there. And I'm not there's so much I could say, and I'm trying to think of the most crucial parts. It's just that I remember starting off, it was like I think I did standard to start off with, and I was like, nah dude, let's do beginner mode because that's like the most popular thing, and I just kind of kept up with that. PS3 cut the PS2 version time in half, roughly. I think it's more like 60% or like 40%, depends how you look at it. It's like PS3 version was about 3 hours, whereas PS2 was like 5.5 to 6.
Ooh.
And I just remembered my times going through that. I lose so many runs so late to like later parts of the game. Like Final Rest is a very notorious part of KH1 for the speedrun. Early game type of stuff, the first half of KH1 is honestly pretty simple in general, and then it kind of turns into like a more of a standard mode run as you get later into it, because the way they compensate for beginner mode in KH1, they actually give you a bunch of stat increase items to boost your defense and attack, and even some of your AP if you wish, because you actually deal the same damage and in all 3 difficulties in KH1, which is a little fun fact people might not know about. But because you have all those boosts at the start of KH1, it compensates for it being beginner mode because you're just really strong out the gate.
Right.
And yeah, I'm just trying to think back. I remember when I started KH1, record was 3 hours and 1 second by Cyberman 6 or 65, depending on where he is on the internet. And a month later, I got the first sub 3 time in 2 hours and 59 minutes and 49 seconds, and that's kind of how I got started with speedrunning Kingdom Hearts. In a month's time, I kind of went from just running it to actually having a world record in it. So that was my sort of introduction.
What year was this approximately?
2013. It was right after the English version of 1.5 came out on PS3.
Yeah, fair enough. For me, I got into speedrunning in 2015 when the PS2 version, sorry, the PS3 version of 2.5 came out. Um, I saw the GDQ run that was done that I think previous winter, which was critical mode for 2FM, and I had been watching GDQ the last couple of GDQs. I'm like, yeah, this looks fun. I like Kingdom Hearts. I'll give this a shot. And I decided to run the PS3 version of 2FM, which is notoriously slow and terrible. Um, as a reference, the my first run on PS3 ended up being about 5 hours and 45 minutes, and the world record I think at the time was, I think Bloody had it. It was like 4:43 or around there, I want to say. And the PS2 world record was like a 3:40, so it was like an hour faster ish. And compared to the now PS4 version that is out, there is an extra hour and a half, approximately, maybe an hour and 35 of load times in the PS3 version of
Jeez.
2FM.
Jesus.
So there was a lot of black screens and loading hearts in
Yeah.
in 2FM PS3.
That's what I remembered. It's like a lot of
And
load
we had
screens.
to certain I won't say like the strats worked, but the like drive forms, you had to pause buffer them because they took like 4 or 5 seconds to load when you activated a drive form. So that was stupid. So yeah, I don't know what went wrong with the PS3 version of 2FM, but it was really poorly optimized and was really slow. But yeah, I mean that's where I got my start. As I've said, we didn't really talk about KH2 today. I'm a KH2 purist, I guess. I love Kingdom Hearts 2. It's my favorite game in the series. One of my favorite games of all time, just solely on how great the combat is. I think the speed run's really fun. It's really I think it's a really technical speed run. It's not too hard to learn, but it's very difficult to master, to get all the strats right and do everything well. Mistakes, especially later in the game, cost a lot of time because you get DM'd by the bosses and lose 45 seconds, a minute, whatever it is.
DM stands for Desperation Move, by the way.
Yep.
Yeah, Desperation Move, which is the boss's super attack, in which they become invulnerable and do this huge cutscene attack that you have to avoid. Yeah, so I think it's really fun. It's a pretty consistent speed run. There's a couple of RNG things like throughout here and there. There's a couple of notorious fights that are awful, like Bailey and 1K, which everyone hates. But for the most part, I think a lot of the fights are actually quite consistent if you do them well, which is what I like about KH2 as a speed run so much. And yeah, I mean, I actually still currently hold the world record in all worlds for PS3. So
There you go.
it's a bad time. It's like 6 hours and 6 minutes or something. It's like over 6 hours. I like anyone could bop it, but no one wants to do all worlds on PS3.
World
So
record forever,
I'll
man.
I'll
Let's
keep
go.
I'll keep my world record.
I was gonna ask Spoon to interrupt. Like, what's a particularly challenging part of that run? Like, at what point are you like, do you feel like is the most challenging?
There's a lot of sticking points, honestly. Early game, even like Roxas
Yeah,
World, is very
Roxas, yeah.
technical, and even the beginning with Sora is tough because, like most games, RPGs especially, you just don't have a lot of options early. You can pretty much just hit stuff. So,
That's
and
about it.
you have to be pretty precise with your
Right.
movements and your combos, and you can lose a lot of time. Like things like the struggle fights in Roxas World, that's a stick. They're pretty consistent for the most part when you get them right, but if you mess it up, you lose 30 seconds, so
Yeah.
that hurts.
Yeah.
And then end game, of course, is just they're the toughest fights in the game, and they'll mess you up if you make mistakes. I think one more thing I'll say, the one thing that sold me on KH2 as a speedrun was seeing the Roxas fight. I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh my goodness. Like, whenever I
Especially
want to
nowadays.
introduce someone to KH2 or speedrunning, I'm like, just watch them just tool on this guy, this fight. And if you fight Roxas casually,
Oh, he's
he'll
difficult.
he messes you up.
Yeah, he's tough.
He's the hardest main story fight by far.
Yeah.
He's tough. So the speedrun they just obliterate him, and you're just like, okay, cool, thanks, thanks. Wow. I was gonna also mention for both of you, compared to the normal casual playthrough, with these runs, there's like specific maybe abilities or attacks that frankly get either spammed or used more often. For KH1, like, what are those for people who aren't like fully aware? Is there anything in there that, like, on a normal casual playthrough you wouldn't use, but on the speedrun you use it like maybe all the time or frequently?
Honestly, when it comes to KH1, it's mostly just mastering like very low to the ground air combos, as we like to phrase it as. And essentially what that refers to is like literally the moment you jump, there's like this little thing you can do where you can slide your thumb over, or whatever button you're using, or finger you're using, I guess, to push the button. But you can kind of do air combos when you're like literally an inch off the ground like that. And you can do very specific things like timing the inputs, like the first frame. You can do your next attack. You can just kind of chain it like boom, 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 like, and like that. And you can literally just. Also, when you do the finisher, you get an immediate cooldown because Sora hits the floor and everything.
Right.
And that's just one of the biggest things that separates like a good run from a great run, is being able to just get out attacks super frequently. So a lot of KH1 is just utilizing Sora's air combo very effectively, but also Ars Arcanum, as I'm sure like anyone who's played 2 as well. That move in KH1 is exceptionally good. And it's also very important for a handful of fights because there's one particular fight called it's the second time you fight Ansem on Destiny Islands at the end of the game. And if you do an Ars Arcanum at the exact moment, you can actually get a DM skip, because Ars does like a series of hits in a very fast manner, that if you can line it up to when he's invulnerable, the very first instance versus when Ars gets a specific hit off, you can actually stagger him out of that attack and just completely bypass that move. So
Jeez.
You don't get Ars Arcanum until like 2/3 of the way through the game, but it's definitely utilized quite a bit in like Hollow Bastion and End of the World. But mostly, I would say, aside from just low to the ground air combos and such, mastering that, and like a handful of magic usage every now and then, it's mostly just really. That's why I love KH1 as a speedrun. You're taking like bare minimum resources and like pushing them to their absolute max as far as effectiveness is concerned, and there's also a big focus on movement in that game, which is a good balance between the combat and the movement going back and forth.
Yeah, I agree, and I'll add to KH1 as well. There are a couple of really cool fights in that game. Ansem 2 is definitely one of them with the DM skip. The stop loops on Hook and Dragon Mal.
Dragon Mal's the best fight.
So yeah, you can there's the stop spell in that game, which most people would expect it wouldn't work on bosses, but it does in KH1. At least some bosses. I haven't really tested it out on a lot, but you stop loop both Dragon Maleficent and Hook, and Dragon Maleficent is a notoriously difficult fight for casual playthroughs of that game.
If you nail the Dragon Mal, like, I'm not exaggerating when I say, because I mean, you know how Dragon Mal is, I'm sure, Otto, like when you play through that. I'm not exaggerating when I say this. On beginner mode, if you perfect the fight, Dragon Mal doesn't get to do anything, and you kill her. Like, it's ridiculously precise. You have to get in like 6 hits every stop, and at the moment you get that 6th hit off, you're like mashing a stop out. And there's like such small details, like you want her to like barely move, like you want to get the stop off like the moment it wears off, so that there's actually a time limit on stop spell itself, where after a certain amount of time has gone by, like the boss just snaps out of the spell regardless of when you cast it again. And there's just a lot of really small details that go in with utilizing your timings on when you get spells off, how effective you get your combos. Like, it's such a simple premise for a lot of things, but it's so difficult to master, and I feel like that's why I really love KH1 as a speedrun more.
Yeah.
And
I think
go ahead,
KH1 is a cool speedrun. A couple other things in KH1 that I'll highlight, as I just think is cool things. The loop on Riku Ansem, or Riku 2, whatever you want to call him again. Another notoriously difficult fight in casual playthroughs. That the first like phase you kind of have to push the phase and then just get some damage off on him, and then if you do your combos correctly, you literally just loop him and he doesn't get to do anything the rest of the fight, which is it's just really cool to see some of these notoriously difficult boss fights just get completely broken by the speedrun. and then some very clever uses of summons, like Dumbo for non-combat purposes and Dumbo skips, which I don't think we want to explain, but we can skip around some cutscenes and stuff in Hollow Bastion using Dumbo to get yourself up on ledges that you shouldn't be able to reach, basically. And then Final Rest, which again, notoriously difficult mob fight. Basically, well, I guess not the last mob fight of the game, but before you enter the final fights, I mean, deal with the first couple waves and then summon Simba and kill everything with Simba. So I think the one thing that is interesting about KH1 compared to KH2 is like there are very few crowd control options in KH1. Like mob fights are rough in KH1.
It's very much improvisation for a lot of them.
Yeah, it's just a lot of them is, like Blizzard, like shotgun Blizzard early in the game, and then just in-game fights. It's like, well, gravity and hope that they get caught in it and then hit them, I guess. I mean, you know it better than me, but that's where I'm at with those. Like,
yeah, you can use stop to like ensnare invisibles, which does help considerably. But of course, when it's beginner mode, you really don't want to have to sit through that time with them, like unfreezing. So I mean, it is very difficult to find like a ultimatum or just like a perfect situation for stuff it's very finicky in the end game, especially. Like I would say End of the World is a pretty rough speedrun segment for KH1. But on the flip side of that, Hollow Bastion 1 is one of the best parts of KH speedrunning, I would feel. Very consistent world, amazing movement tech with Dumbo skips and everything, and just some really cool fights like the Riku, Ansem, and Dragon Mal fight. So I mean, it has its ups and downs like every speed game.
Yeah. What else? I don't know. Yeah, I just like KH2 better because I like KH2 better as a game. I think that's why I like KH2 as a speedrun more, just because I think KH2 is more fun of a game to play. I've only speedrun beginner mode for all three of the mainline games, 1, 2, and 3. So, Mist, maybe you want to talk quickly about speedrunning the higher difficulties?
Yes. I was actually gonna say before you said that, I the way that I view it for the main three is KH3 is amazing for movement tech, 2 is amazing for combat, and 3 is a good, or 1 is a good mix of both, like equally. But for higher difficulties, because I've been playing 2FM Crit recently, and I've also done, I haven't done Crit or level 1 for KH3, but I've done Proud and level 1 for KH1. I will be doing level 1 for KH2 in a little while, but honestly, I feel like the higher difficulties are mostly just a test of your overall knowledge of the game. I mean, not that beginner mode doesn't do that, but it's like there's certain things you need to know, like what do you have to do to dodge or block a specific move, because obviously most stuff is gonna like 1 or 2 shot you.
You can't just willy-nilly take hits on high difficulties.
Yeah, beginner mode kind of gives you some leniency that you don't have to know the fights as well to get through them, but critical mode you pretty much have to know exactly what you're doing to not lose tremendous time everywhere. I've had the experience of like KH1 Proud. Anyone who's played it knows that game. I mean, the parts where it's challenging in a good way is really good, but we have a few parts of the game such as Pod Centipede, Tiger Head. What else? I mean, even some bits of let's see. Hook fight on Proud is pretty annoying. Like, there's some moments on Proud mode and level 1 mode, well, I guess not level 1 mode, but level 1, where the game just kind of pulls one over on you, and you don't really have much of a way of getting out of it, for lack of a better word. You're just kind of at the mercy of whatever the game feels like doing to you. But at the same time, there's still certain strats that you can't do because it's not beginner mode, but there's also alternatives that are also pretty fast.
Yeah.
I'm talking a little bit too much about one in this context, but it's just really fun in that sense that you always kind of have to worry about dying at almost every turn. So it kind of keeps your focus up, like not just because your run is good, like it's fast, but just one death anywhere kind of ruins your speed run, regardless of how far you've made it into it.
Sure.
And it's pretty frustrating. I've actually had a run recently, like just yesterday, where I got basically a 1-minute personal best in 2FM Crit. But I lost like 45 seconds to one of the boss fights because I made a really crucial mistake. It wasn't a death, but it might as well have been. And it's like, it's a type of mistake you could still make on beginner mode, but it just kind of is a a reminder when you are speedrunning that you can, regardless of how good your run is, just takes one split and it could be just completely trashed, and you just have to keep that the last split, the only split that really matters is the last one. Like, what's the time difference on that when it comes to an overall PB? You're just kind of working it and working it and working it until you get to that last split to keep the run alive, so you can actually get that improvement by the end of the day.
Yeah.
And part of running a game like Kingdom Hearts is that, they're not the longest games ever, but as a speed run, they're relatively long. KH1 is like for if you're world record, you're at like 210, but like most runs, like 2.5 to 3 hours, I would say, like around there for most runners, especially if you're just getting started, probably closer to 3 hours. And then KH2, you're looking at, again, first run probably 3.5 to 4 hours, and once you get better, you're getting closer to 3 hours. They're long runs, and yeah, if you make a big mistake, if you take a death, if you take a DM at some point, you lose a lot of time. It's about stamina, and also if you do make that mistake, is about retaining your composure and being like, all right, it's okay, that happened, it sucks, but let's move on. We can still like make this PB even with that mistake. So it's definitely a stamina game. It's a mental game, a composure game. So I find that very interesting as a speedrun, and I know obviously not everyone has the time to speedrun long games like Kingdom Hearts, but like as far as RPGs go, I feel like they're on the shorter side for speedruns, for RPGs at
For
least.
RPGs for sure. It seems like it. Yeah, I can't imagine doing a Tales run. Oh, that's
Yeah,
like that's a long time.
Tails runs, from what I've seen, actually, except Exilia. This is a little bit of a sidetrack, but I think Exilia is around 3 hours. That's for a really good run,
Right.
and then like anything else is like at least 4, maybe
Right.
5 or 6.
Just
So they're
for
pretty long.
perspective, yeah. Just for
Yeah,
perspective. I don't want to
yeah.
like close this down early, but I want to get final thoughts from both of you for that, and then I'll sort of have to close this up because we're hitting time pretty soon. Any other like final thoughts you guys want to give towards just like running these games, or just like anything in general that you want to sort of like and close on before I round this out?
I would say that if anyone is looking into speedrunning the KH series, there's like a few good starting points. Like we didn't really talk about it too much, but like the BBS beginner mode category is very short. They're only like roughly in one-ish, like around an hour to speedrun. KH1 is a decent game to start with beginner mode because it is a bit lengthy, but it's not too difficult of a run. And also you have the type of shorter runs, like even like 0.2, which is like not even like 30 minutes, I think. So definitely would say if anyone is interested, maybe gravitate towards those types of starting categories and see what you think about it.
Spoon, anything?
I agree with that, but I would also say, if you're able to, if you have the time and you're interested in speedrunning, I would say just pick the game you like best. If you love Chain of Memories, run Chain of Memories. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a great speedrun because there's a lot of RNG in it, but maybe you just love Chain of Memories, so you want to play that one. If you love BBS, do BBS. If you love KH2 like me, run KH2. If you love KH3, give KH3 a shot. I actually think KH3 is a pretty fun speedrun. It gets a little like samey, I guess, because as we talked about, magic is quite overpowered and we hardly use physical combos at
Yeah.
all because it just takes too long to build up to anything that is useful. And magic, even if you build up to a Keyblade transformation, I still think magic does more damage.
Magic does a lot of
So
damage.
magic and shot locks and links are pretty much the way to go in
Yeah.
KH3. But you'll actually, if you watch a KH3 speedrun, I think it's pretty cool. You'll see some usages of links. Like, man, when I first saw like the aerial strats, did you come up with those? I thought I saw you were the first one to post the aerial strats. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but like,
I remember seeing it from someone. Like what's it
okay,
called? I was one of the first people doing
to
runs that
use it,
incorporate, and then people were
Okay.
like, "What in the world is happening?" Like,
Yeah,
hey, look, it's demon time. Oh, it's gone.
it's dead. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's dead.
like what Ariel does is if you time it right, she jumps out and all these like water droplets come out, and each of those has like a hitbox and does damage. So it's not that useful against mob fights or enemies that don't have big hitboxes, but against enemies with big hack boxes like those rock trolls or that Dino boss in Big Hero 6 or the Demon Tide, as Miss said, you just jump with Ariel and you just
The
watch
end.
the health bar just disappear.
Oh yeah,
It's
it's
really
crazy.
satisfying. and really cool. So cool uses of links. Same thing with like Ralph early in the run, the boss of the Kingdom of Corona World, the Grim Guardianess or whatever it's called. If you set up Ralph White, you can one shot that boss with Ralph, and that boss has like 10 health bars or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's
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 ridiculous.
it's tanky.
So
So
so I think KH1 is actually quite a cool speed run as well, and quite fun. It is a little bit longer than some of the other ones, mostly because the load times are a little bit rough, to be
PS5,
honest.
please.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah,
So yeah,
series pretty fun to speedrun. Honestly, just a bit of a time investment to really get the most out of it.
yeah,
Much like the normal series, but
yeah. I'm I can be busy sometimes, but yeah, feel free. There's a Kingdom Hearts speedrunning community Discord, which you can find the link to on speedrun.com. I think it's /KH, right? Not /Kingdom Hearts. I think.
yeah, /KH.
Yeah, speedrun.com/KH. You can find the Discord server there, or feel free to, at least for me, like you can message me if you want advice for me about speedrunning KH. I'm always happy to help personally, so I don't want to speak for Mist on that, but that's for me. Um,
so okay. Well, let's round this out then, and we'll sort of see if we can if anybody is interested, like Spoon just talked about that. If Miss is interested, if people are interested in talking to him about that stuff, I'm sure he'd post like a Discord or something, or you could send him a note. I'm sure. I don't know. Maybe he just doesn't want to help you. Who knows? But maybe he just doesn't. He's like, no.
Conceited.
No, I don't want to. Anyway, so that'll do it for this part 2 for KH. I hope we rounded everything out for the most part. Obviously, there's so much more, and the thing is, it's just so difficult to get through everything. But I think I'm hoping that we did enough justice to pretty much everything we wanted to get through. Where if you weren't somebody that was interested, or maybe you already were interested, maybe you got something extra out of this, particularly with the speedrunning side of it, because I'm sure there are plenty of people who played it casually. You'll see some of the speedrun strats, like the aerial thing, and you just think, wow, I really wish I would have done that earlier. Really wish I would have experimented. So if you're interested in following any of us, so I've told my Twitter earlier, mine's Automaton89. I mostly tweet the Myriacast stuff. Spoon will obviously do that as well. Spoon, what's your Twitter for that?
it's at SPT Spoon.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
And then if you want to give Mist a follow or follow him for like Twitch or something, Mist, what is your socials for that?
For Twitter, it's Mist_Master1 because some dude took my name.
Rude.
But and my Twitch is just Mistmaster1 without that underscore, so same thing.
Got it. And is this like you're streaming every day, or is there a specific?
I don't really have like a specific schedule,
Okay.
but I usually stream most days of the week, like probably 5 or 6.
Okay.
So yeah, pretty frequently.
Got it. Okay, so frequently enough where any day you could probably pop in there and you'd be up.
Yeah.
Okay. And so for me in particular, I have a schedule now, at least until things like shift with the situation we're currently in. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, maybe sometimes, I don't know about Friday all the time, and then Saturday. This week I still play AC Odyssey for the most part. Also playing AI the Somnium Files, and today was a special case, but if I ever challenge one of my friends to like Pokemon Black and White rando stuff, I'll do that. But that's like a rare occasion. And Spoon, anything else you want to sort of shout out from your end? Otherwise, I'll close everything out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm SPT Spoon on Twitch as well. I also stream sometimes. I mean, I'm going back and forth on it, to be honest. I'm like redoing KH3, so I'll probably be doing KH3 runs here and there. I've been streaming some casual stuff, but I haven't really been enjoying streaming casual stuff very much because honestly, no one's been watching. So I may or may not. That's more of a when I feel like it type of thing. I'm on break right now though for the next month or so, so you know, I probably will be streaming like relatively often. I just can't say exactly when.
Sure.
So yeah.
Okay.
If you're interested in seeing KH3 runs, I'll probably be doing that some days. I don't have a specific schedule.
Got it.
Sorry about that. But
he's
yeah.
he's twitch.tv/SPT Spoon, same as the Twitter. So lastly, I want to say that again, the Myriathon's next marathon is going to be June 8th to 14th. We'd be really interested for people to stop by. We'll have the podcast that Monday as well. Actually, Spoon and I will be doing games that day, that Monday, that first Monday. We're gonna be on for most part. Spoon's brother Ghost, who was a guest before, will also be on. That day, we'd be really happy to see people come out and hang out and talk to us and support Direct Relief, which is a charity. So please consider supporting that. We'd really appreciate it. It's for a great cause. So, you know, it's something that we really are passionate about for that. And then all of the Myriathon socials. I talked about the Twitter and the Twitch, which if you're watching this, you're on it. But the YouTube as well, the Space Myriathon on YouTube. Please consider subscribing and or following. If you don't want like the alerts and get spammed, you know, you don't have to hit the bell icon. Obviously, you can turn that off. But all the VODs for these go up there. So if you're interested, you missed it, please feel free to check that out as well. Those are typically going up the Wednesday after the podcast. So that'll do it for that. Thank you, Mist, for joining us today. It is always a pleasure to have you, especially for obviously these Cage episodes, but just in general.
Happy to be here, man.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on. And Spoon and I will be back next week with a topic that we don't know yet. So we'll check out the Twitters for that. And thanks, everybody. Hope you guys are having a safe holiday today if you're celebrating it. If not, just generally stay safe. And we'll see you guys next week at the same time, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Thanks, and bye, everybody.
See ya.
Have a good evening.